Hello, good evening and welcome to TVB News. Facing almost certain defeat, British Prime Minister Theresa May has postponed a parliamentary vote on her Brexit deal with the European Union. She said she'll go back to the EU to seek changes to the divorce agreement, but it's unclear how much more, if anything, she'll be able to get. Alan Buckner reports.
In an emergency statement on Monday, May said she accepted that her deal stands little chance of passing.
On one issue, the Northern Ireland backstop, there remains widespread and deep concern. As a result, if we went ahead and held the vote tomorrow, the deal would be rejected by a significant margin. We will therefore defer the vote scheduled for tomorrow and not proceed to divide the House at this time.
May said she'll meet with EU leaders later this week, but her opposition isn't sure there's much she can do.
We're in an extremely serious and unprecedented situation. The government has lost control of events and is in complete disarray. It's been evident for weeks that the Prime Minister's deal did not have the confidence of this House. Yet she ploughed on regardless, reiterating this is the only deal available. Can she be clear with the House? Is she seeking changes to the deal or mere reassurances?
European Council President Donald Tusk released a statement saying the Brexit deal will be discussed at Thursday's Council meeting. But he made it clear that it's only to help the British government ratify the exit process, and the agreement is not up for renegotiation. Yesterday, the EU's top court ruled that Britain can revoke its divorce notice unilaterally, raising the hopes of pro-Europeans. But the UK Brexit minister said that won't happen.
That the government knows this course is possible, just as many undesirable actions are possible, does not change the fact that such an approach is hypothetical and the government has no intention of doing it.
May has not set a date for a new vote. The UK departure is supposed to take place next March 29th. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
French President Emmanuel Macron has announced wage rises for the poorest workers and tax cuts for pensioners. It was Macron's first national address following weeks of violent Yellow Vest protests. The government will top up the minimum wage so it won't impact on employers. It's expected to cost billions to state coffers. But he refused to reinstate a wealth tax or back down on his reform agenda, which will see overhauls in pensions, unemployment benefits and public expenditures. Macron struck a humble tone after accusations that his governing style and aloofness to the plight of the poor were fracturing the country. But one analyst noted he also reaffirmed the state's authority.
He didn't say that, but he meant it. We can control more and more the demonstrations, but I've heard you, I understood your suffering, I realize that we have to enter into a new dialogue. So again, what was the most important was not only what he said, but the way he said it. The only question is whether it was not too late, and still whether it was not too little.
Thailand will hold a much-delayed general election on February 24th after the ruling military junta lifted its ban on political activity. The ban was imposed when the junta took power in a coup in 2014. It came after months of street protests against the democratically elected government of former Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. Many are hoping the election will result in restoring democracy to the kingdom. The junta began easing the ban in September. The election will likely pit the populist political movement backed by former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra against the royalist establishment and the military.
China and the US mapped out the next stage of their trade talks during a phone call between senior trade officials. Beijing's Commerce Ministry said Vice Premier Liu He had spoken to US Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer on a pre-arranged phone call. Lighthizer said that unless Sino-US trade talks wrap up successfully by March 1st, 2019, new US tariffs will be imposed. This comes almost 2 weeks after President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Donald Trump agreed to a truce when they met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina. Trump agreed to delay the planned increase of tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports from 10 to 25% on January 1st. The fate of Huawei's chief financial officer hangs in the balance after a Canadian provincial court adjourned its decision on whether to grant her bail. Meng Wanzhou faces possible extradition to the United States in what is seen as a thorn in the side of ongoing Sino-US trade tensions. Meng Wanzhou's husband, Liu Xiaozhong, showed up at British Columbia Court on Monday for a second day of bail hearing. This as a handful of Meng's supporters showed up outside the court demanding her release. They slammed the Canadian government for doing the dirty work for the United States.
It's not the Canadians' business, okay? It's Americans. Why should we do the dirty job for the Americans? Right? We are having trading war with Americans as well, just like Chinese.
Lawyers for Huawei's chief financial officer proposed that the 46-year-old remain under house arrest with an ankle bracelet while awaiting an extradition hearing on US fraud charges. They say the plan, along with a 15 million Canadian dollar bail guarantee, ensures she cannot flee Vancouver. However, the judge took issue with the appointment of Meng's husband as her custodian because he is not a resident of the province and had only arrived in Canada last week on a 6-month tourist visa. As a result, Meng would spend another night in jail as her bail decision was delayed until Tuesday. Last Friday, federal prosecutors urged the court to deny her bail, saying Meng remains a serious flight risk because she has vast resources and has no meaningful connections to Canada. Meng is the daughter of Huawei's founder Ren Zhengfei. The US has 60 days from her December 1st arrest while in transit at Vancouver International Airport to issue a formal extradition request to Canada. Her arrest came on the same day President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump agreed to a 90-day ceasefire in the trade dispute that threatens to disrupt global commerce. Washington accuses Huawei of using a Hong Kong shell company to sell equipment to Iran in violation of US sanctions. It also alleges Meng and Huawei misled banks about the company's business dealings in Iran. Her arrest has further fueled Sino-US trade tensions at a time when the two countries are seeking to resolve a dispute over Beijing's technology policies. Speaking at a conference in Shanghai today, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Beijing will spare no effort to protect against any bullying that infringes the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese citizens.
And here in Hong Kong, the chief executive today spoke out on the 3 SAR passports issued over the years to the Huawei CFO. Carrie Lam said all the procedures in the issuance of SAR passports to Meng Wanzhou are in order. Sharon Tang reports.
A Canadian court has released copies of some of the documents in Meng Wanzhou's bail hearing. The court learned that out of the 3 Hong Kong SAR passports possessed by Meng, this one, valid until 2021, is the latest one issued to her. However, court documents showed that Meng used an older SAR passport while in transit in Vancouver. Speaking to the press before today's Executive Council meeting, Chief Executive Carrie Lam explained that in situations such as a lost passport, a change of personal particulars or visa issues would result in someone having more than one passport under his or her name.
Insofar as the issue of passports to Madame Meng, all the procedures and arrangements are in order. So she has been issued a few passports over a period since she has obtained the Hong Kong permanent resident status because of the specified circumstances that I have explained. But at one point in time, or at any point in time, she holds only one valid Hong Kong SAR passport.
The CE added that the Immigration Department will look into this particular case and announce the outcome of the case file review. Meanwhile, Carrie Lam fears that the incident would be sensationalized by ill-intentioned individuals to cause harm that would affect SAR passport holders. As the city's chief, Lam stressed she must protect Hong Kongers' well-being. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam expressed her deepest condolences to the victims of yesterday's fatal traffic accident in North Point. Mourners laid offerings on the roadside at Hayward Street after the tragic accident left 4 dead and 11 injured. Yesterday afternoon, a school bus rode down the slope on Chung Hong Street, hitting other vehicles and pedestrians. Initial investigation suggests the driver did not apply the handbrakes properly. The CE stressed more efforts will be made to enhance road safety.
As a result of the very serious fatal traffic accidents this year, the relevant departments will, of course, in light of the investigations of every incident, recommend and take the necessary measures. If we need to put in some public money in order to enhance safety, we will do it for the benefit of the passengers.
Welcome back. 2 Democratic Party lawmakers appeared in court today to face charges in connection with their protest actions in the Legislative Council chamber in June. Both Andrew Wan and Lam Cheuk-ting pleaded not guilty to the charges. Pinky Wong has more details.
Democratic Party lawmakers Andrew Wan and Lam Cheuk-ting appeared at the Eastern Magistracy this morning. They both pleaded not guilty to 1 count of obstructing LegCo officers from exercising duties during a LegCo meeting in June. Wan faced an additional charge of common assault, which he also denied. Both lawmakers have been released on $1,000 bail. The judge asked both sides to submit required documents such as admitted facts 3 days prior to the trial. The court was adjourned until January 29th next year. Prosecutors will be summoning 9 witnesses to testify in the trial. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Prosecutors in the Occupy trial said protesters had no right to block roads and disrupt traffic during the nearly 3-month demonstration back in 2014. They also believe Occupy leaders, including Benny Tai, should be held accountable. Haley Zhou has more.
With all 9 defendants sitting in the dock in the back of the courtroom, the prosecution made its final case. The Occupy movement caused unlawful and unreasonable obstruction to public spaces. Prosecutors said during the Occupy protest, traffic on roads were severely affected. They cited the 453,000 people taking buses that passed through Harcourt Road, Tim May Avenue, and Phan Vy Pier Street. The prosecution also mentioned the case a defendant climbed onto Ching Ma Bridge and staged a 2-hour demonstration, causing traffic jams. He was convicted of public nuisance for causing obstruction to public roads. Previously, the defense submitted a public survey that showed only a small fraction of Occupy protesters were strongly motivated to be there by the calls of the Occupy leaders. The prosecution argued, according to the law, the organizers could still be held accountable. After the prosecution closed its case, Benny Tai requested to make his own closing submission, which is expected to take up to half an hour. The court was adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
A former MTR Corporation executive told a commission of inquiry today that it was pointless for the railway company to submit retrospective records on couplers installed at Hong Kong Station. That's as the panel continued its investigation into construction problems at Hong Kong Station Extension under the Shelton to Central Link project. Caleb Lung has details.
One focus of today's hearing, retrospective records submitted by MTR Corporation on the installation of couplers. Philco Wong, the former project director of NTRC who resigned after the scandal broke, gave his testimony. He said he knew nothing about that records as he had left the company when it was submitted. Wong believes the retrospective records were fabricated and pointless. He also noted that after the scandal unfolded, the government asked MTRC to submit a report in June. Wong said he asked his staff to follow up on the matter, and he personally did not take part in writing the report. When Wong was later shown a picture of the worksite, he was shocked at the diaphragm walls being shortened and fewer couplers than what was recorded in the report were installed. Wong told MTRC Chairman Frederick Ma about it, and Ma was also shocked. Wong was asked about why he resigned. He insisted it was due to personal reasons. Lincoln Leung, the MTRC CEO, also testified today. He said he didn't know that retrospective records were submitted along with the company's internal investigation report, adding that it was unfortunate how the matter had been handled. Leung also recalled a meeting with Transport Chief Frank Chan and Frederick Ma back in August, where the government expressed dissatisfaction with errors in the submitted report. The government lost faith in MTRC's management and saw the need to relinquish their duties. Leung later told Philco Wong about the meeting and received Wong's resignation the following day. Frederick Ma is expected to testify tomorrow. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
United Nations members have adopted a deal aimed at improving the way the world copes with rising migration, but nearly 30 countries skipped the ceremony in Morocco. The pact was agreed in July by 193 UN members, except the United States, but only 164 formally signed it at Monday's meeting. The deal is aimed at fostering cooperation on migration. Among the 10 countries that pulled out, most were from formerly communist Eastern Europe. 6 more, including Israel and Bulgaria, are debating whether to quit. It's not yet known if the rest of the countries absent from the conference in Morocco might also pull out. With a record 21.3 million refugees globally, the UN began working on the non-binding pact after more than 1 million arrived in Europe in 2015.
2 co-winners of this year's Nobel Peace Prize received their awards at a ceremony in the Norwegian capital Oslo on Monday. Congolese Dr. Denis Mukwege was honored for his work helping sexually abused women at a hospital he founded in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mukwege shared the prize with Nadia Murad, a Yazidi rights activist in Iraq and survivor of sexual slavery perpetrated by Islamic State. During the ceremony, both Nobel laureates called for justice for the victims of sexual violence in conflicts. And that's the news.
Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.